you going, man?
Hey John, how are you, mate? You've been in the wars a little bit, but you're back.
Yeah, had an upset tummy. Had to be taken care of on the bread and water for the past 3 days. But it's Wednesday and we're back.
All good, back in business.
Yeah, firing hard. It's like Trent Robinson.
Yes. We are. I'll just point out to our listeners and viewers, we are recording on Wednesday morning, so it is only a day before the ANZAC Day games. We will point that out. So we are recording this at the end of round 7 before round 8 has started on Wednesday morning, the day before ANZAC Day on Thursday, obviously. Trent Robinson, the grumpiest man in rugby league at the moment, just whinging about the referee every second week, it seems.
Well, because his team's losing. And losing bad, like losing really, really bad. They don't look good. I watched the Storm Roosters game on Thursday last week. Yeah. It was a terrible performance by the Roosters. And when I look back through how the Roosters are going all year and even think about how we've talked about them, everybody keeps talking about them as like some powerhouse team, top 4 team, all that kind of thing. But their performances have actually been pretty sloppy. There's a couple of players in the team that are playing really well. Like James Tedesco continues to show form, better form than he has in the past few years.
It's probably not origin selection form though.
No, but it's a back end of his career fullback form. But for a superstar, best player in the world at one stage, they're sitting 11th. It's now a quarter of the way through the season, and we're starting to see the teams that are actual powerhouses or are going well pre that origin period that Piercy was talking about. We're starting to see the inconsistent teams like the Warriors and the Dragons, and we're starting to see the teams that are just poor. And the games that the Roosters have won, like against the Broncos in the opening round, against the terrible Rabbitohs, close win against the Knights, they haven't actually been playing well at all. And so Trent Robinson's got to come up with something.
He looks like a coach under pressure. His body language says to me that somebody internally has maybe put a hard word on him. It hasn't come out, but has somebody said to him, look, this needs to improve, otherwise you're under pressure. I mean, I'll go through it. Since they won their last premiership in 2019, they've gradually gotten worse. 2020, they finished 4th and went out in straight sets in the finals. And this was the year that Sonny Bill Williams came back and they just bombed out. Him coming back didn't help them. 2021, they finished 5th, reached week 2 of the finals. They were thrashed by Manly in week 2 of the finals that year. 2022, finished 6th, got thrashed by Souths in week 1 of the finals. 2023, finished 7th. Scraped their way through to week 2 of the finals, and as you just said before, 2024, they're 11th after 7 rounds of the season, after adding Spencer Leniu and Dom Young to an already impressive roster. Now, I know there's been some issues, but, they've happened under Trent Robinson's watch, right? Going into the season, they had these 2 new recruits. So he just looks angry. He's blaming the match officials at every opportunity. We saw him have a go at, for some reason, it was he wasn't happy that Dom Young was sent off after clocking Blake Taff in the head and knocking him out on the spot. He blew up about the referees there. He blew up about the referees after he wasn't happy with that try that Melbourne were awarded with. He thought Asofa Solomona provided assistance to the try. But, he can lash out at the officials all he wants. The reality is that this is a coach who's underperforming. He's been underperforming for a long time. And right at the moment, you'd have to say that the only reason he's still in the job is because of those 3 premierships. He's living off the premierships at this point. It seems like he is able to live off them at the moment. The question is, how much longer can he live off these premierships? Because that's the only thing keeping him there at the moment. He's not achieving at the potential that this roster should be at.
Yeah, I think maybe he's a bit too comfortable. And if I was in his situation right now, I would be looking for an out and perhaps a change of scenery. Because, as you said, like they've just gotten worse. and you can't see anything in them at the moment. Maybe it is like due to those losses of players. Like you said, they recruited Spencer Leniu and Dom Young. They were the big off-season recruitments, and both of them have been missing for a major chunk of the season. But that doesn't account for the last few years. Penrith get in the way of everyone winning, but the Roosters haven't even made the grand final and haven't performed well in the finals even. So he's got to, it's rugby league. When you're going badly, you blame something else just to take your attention off it. South have been doing it for all year as well. Trent Robinson is I think just doing that. He's only got the thing with the Roosters. No matter who you are, you've only got the refs to blame. Like when you don't want to blame. No, I'm not saying like it's their fault. I'm saying that when you're trying to deflect blame, you've only got the refs to blame. Ricky Stewart will often blame his players, blame the interchange. Earlier this year, he blamed the interchange. Was it him who blamed the interchange bench? I can't remember. But, he'll blame his interchange bench. It's one of the Ricky Stewart bingo cards. He'll blame the salary cap. He'll blame the mistreatment of the NRL. When you're Ricky Stewart, you got a whole bunch of stuff.
That's the thing.
But when you're at the Roosters, Trent Robinson can't blame the salary cap. He can't blame his players because they're all superstars. He can't blame the NRL for unfair treatment and times of the day because they're the Roosters and they get really special treatment by the NRL. The only thing he has to blame is the refs.
That's the thing. The only week Ricky's really had a blow up this year was after that Titans game. Apart from that, Ricky's been, by Ricky's standards, he's been pretty good this year. Trent Robinson seems to have taken his mantle as the whingiest coach in the NRL.
Well, the Raiders are performing better than expected. So what has Ricky got to complain about at all? Except for the Titans losing.
Well, I mean, this is it. I mean, he complained even when he won, Ricky, but that's Ricky. So you got to ask yourself, I just went through their finishes since 2020. So I think you got to ask the question, well, what does really being a contender look like? I don't think, I've said before, I don't think it's good enough to sort of finish in, the bottom half of the 8 and bomb out in week 1 or week 2 of the finals. That's not really being a contender in my eyes. If you ask me what's being a contender, I think you got to make the last 4. If you make the prelim, you're in the last 4 in the finals. I think you're a genuine contender for the premiership. But even if you finish in the top 4 and then lose in straight sets, I don't think that's really being a contender. No. You got to make that last 4. And if you don't, well, what does it matter? What does it matter if you're just scraping into the 8, losing in week 1 or 2? If you're not in those last 4 teams, you're not really contending. And they haven't, with a star-studded roster that seems to get better every year. They always get the recruits they want. With a star-studded roster, this team's been underachieving year after year after year now. And at some point, he won't be able to live off these 3 premierships any longer.
No, and that's that's what happened to Ricky Stewart. He won his premiership in his debut year and then hung around for another 7 years underperforming, got sacked, moved off to Parramatta in between there or whatever. But now he's at the Raiders and he can underperform because the Raiders, I think, are in that situation where they're content to sometimes scrape into the 8 and get knocked out. That's the whole culture of the club, actually, I think. Whereas, I'd say Robbo's only got a couple more this year and probably next year at the Roosters before Uncle Nick says, no, we've got to make a massive change. And, we talked about it with Gowie and the Rabbitohs coach, Demetriou. It's the coach that goes. The easiest thing to change is the coach. End of the regular season, 4th 2020, 5th 2021, 6th 2022, 7th 2023. This year, as you said, they're 11th. This is a team that's progressively getting worse and worse. And you say to yourself, if you be completely honest with yourself and go, can you see the Roosters winning another premiership with Trent Robinson as the coach? I'd have to say at the moment the answer to that is no. I mean, it's hard to see any team winning the premiership except for the Panthers.
The thing is, though, I know that obviously the Panthers are a superstar side, and they've developed their own talent, and good luck to them. They've earned their success, absolutely. But the Roosters on paper, they can match it with the Panthers. They've got a star-studded roster.
So when you look at it, right, I can't see anyone winning. When I say that, it's like I'm joking. I can't see anyone except the Panthers winning the premiership. But I can see, like right now, as based on this year, the Storm, even the Broncos, the Sharks. Well, the Sharks haven't really played anyone, but the Sharks and even possibly the Dolphins being in that top 4 spot alongside the Panthers. The Sea Eagles as well. Cowboys are up a bit up and down, but I can see people who can, teams who can push the Panthers to take that 4-peat away from them. I don't know, 4x4, whatever you want to call them. Yeah. Whereas the Roosters are not one of those. They're just not. To me, the Roosters right now are in the vein of the Dragons and the Warriors. Not quite the Bulldogs. They're not quite the Bulldogs and they're not quite the West Tigers, but they're the Dragons and the Warriors. Middle of the road. Might. Just based on the first 7, 6
at the moment, if the Bulldogs are playing the Roosters tomorrow, I'd think the Bulldogs would win. I think they're in better.
It's so hard for me to tip them. I keep making that mistake. They're not a Titans or a Rabbitohs or a Knights, which is shockingly bad. I don't think the Roosters are currently an Eels, West Tigers, or Bulldogs because they're. I think just because of the roster, but they're that Warriors Dragons team that. They might fight for the 8 at the end of the year if it continues on like it is. But
I think we're at a point where we can say, look, this team's not going to genuinely contend this year, and it's yet another season where they're not going to genuinely contend. And I've been through their recent seasons. Because Andrew Johns wrote an interesting column about the Roosters. He said they're the most perplexing team in the NRL. He said, before a ball was kicked this year, I thought they were a top 4 team, but there are a few questions they still haven't answered because things haven't really clicked yet. He says, are they title heavyweights, top 4 material, just make the finals or miss them altogether? Honestly, it could be any of those. And you go, well, why? With the roster they've got, that shouldn't be happening. They should be a top 4 side. They should be in the last 4. Right at the end of the season.
It's all Brandon Smith's fault for being a terrible dummy half.
I tell you, there were some really good lines in an article I read by Dane Eldridge of news.com.au talking about Trent Robinson. He says, but if there's one thing more galling than a losing coach bleating about referees, it's a losing coach bleating about referees despite a squad valued at half the ASX. He also went on to say... that Andrew Webster is stealing Robinson's mantle as the new cool relief teacher of coaching. and this was another really good line by Dane Eldridge. He says, with his saber-toothed side failing to qualify for the top 4 since 2020, as we've pointed out, Robinson is grappling with a side that has become irrelevant, not good enough to challenge the top dogs, and not bad enough to warrant a petition.
Think about it tomorrow, right? So the Dragons have won 2 in a row, and they're playing the Roosters tomorrow.
Yes.
ANZAC Day, traditional ANZAC Day.
Yes.
Now, there's all those amazing games for the ANZAC Day thing where it was like close, and there's the game where the Dragons pulled off a last 5-minute 2 tries, and the Roosters pulled off a last 5-minute 2 tries, and close. Last few years it hasn't been like that. It's been all Roosters, right? Think about tomorrow. If there's a major change in the season, it usually actually comes after ANZAC Day for both of these teams. A lot of feeling in the game, a lot of tradition. If the Roosters put it on the Dragons, I think they can go on a run. But if the Dragons put it on the Roosters, I think you'll see the Roosters drop more. I don't think the Dragons will go on a run, but I think the Roosters will drop more. Because if they take that like a beating on ANZAC Day, it sets them poorly for the rest of the year.
Yeah, if I were you, I'd be sort of quietly confident about that game, to be honest.
Dragons are a bit like...
but there's been real improvement under Flanagan. I think we have to point out.
Yeah, 100%.
I think, given with what Flanagan's got to work with there, I think at this stage, he seems to be getting the most out of them. These are 2 coaches in very different boats. You've got Shane Flanagan, who has a team that on paper doesn't look too good, but is getting the absolute most out of it. Whereas Trent Robinson's the opposite. A team that looks very good on paper, but he's not getting the most out of it.
Yeah, and there's the Dragons have a whole bunch of actually guys that are playing really well, but tomorrow they're paying $2.76 to the Roosters, $1.46. Based on last week's form, you wouldn't want to say that, but I think it's entirely based on paper. And yeah, it is really it's very funny the way the ANZAC Day game works in the past, where it's like a lot of my friends are Roosters fans. Shout out to Seth, Flower Scientist. We know that match is like a turning point. If you get smashed, if your team gets really smashed, we kind of write off the rest of the year. I don't expect the Dragons to go on this mad run where they just develop into a top 4 team. But if they dominate tomorrow, then I would expect them to. I would actually change my 16th place to they'll be pushing for the bottom of the top 8. Whereas if the Roosters dominate tomorrow, I expect them to go on a run and become that top 4 team. That's how pivotal. It's just fanciful. It's just there's no science behind it, but that's kind of how we feel about the ANZAC Day game. And so I usually reserve complete judgment on either teams until the ANZAC Day game.
We should sort of just put in this little caveat that some people may be watching this podcast after the ANZAC Day game, by which stage the Roosters might have put it on the Dragons. Then again, the Dragons might have put it on the Roosters.
So that's we reserve the judgment. I kind of tend to reserve the judgment for both teams fully, and my commitment for how they're going to end.
That's interesting.
But right now, I am kind of I look at the odds, and the Dragons are a bit who knows? They could just drop the ball.
Roosters are favourites, aren't they?
Yeah, $1.46. Yeah, but the Dragons are they could drop the ball through. It's $1.46 for the Roosters and $2.76 for
that's with the elite bet for the Dragons. Really
bet with your head not over it.
I was just going to say one other thing on this Robinson thing. So he complained about Melbourne getting given that try where he thought Nelson or Sofa Solomon interfered.
I thought a little bit too,
but I mean, he didn't. A lot of people were saying, well, why did James Tedesco not get sin bin for that trip on Ryan Pappenhausen?
The sliding tackle.
But this is the thing. So he complains about the Asofa Solomona situation, but yet, this is a problem with coaches in general who complain about the referees. They only complain about the decisions that go against them. They make no mention of the decisions that go their way. And that's why Trent Robinson has had egg on his face.
Except for Ricky Stewart, who complains even when he wins. But it's when you're really deflecting, that's what you look for, all excuses. I've seen athletes make excuses so often that are just so ridiculous. That don't make any sense just because they're looking for a reason. Because in reality, everyone in sports, I guess, is arrogant. Everyone. You have to be arrogant and think you're going to win all the time. They're all egoists. After Alex Potan Pereira knocked out Jiri Prohaska for the light heavyweight title in the UFC, a lot of people were saying it was an early stoppage. Fans. And Yeri afterwards said, it wasn't. I was actually unconscious. He was fully unconscious. That's the thing. People don't really see because the ref is so close. But his eyes rolled in the back of the head. It was a flash knockout. Yes, he recovered. But really, he went unconscious. It was a fair stoppage in my mind. Maybe I'm biased because Pereira is my favourite current fighter. But Yeri, that was, 7-8 months ago. Yeri has been adamant. It was a fair stoppage. Yesterday, he did a interview with Michael Bisping where it was oh no, it was stopping so early. Now he's deflecting. He's had a fight since then, but he's deflecting now, He's making excuses because what he's doing is really when I had Jake O'Driscoll on the podcast, he was talking about there's a certain gamesmanship to also your online, your presence, your persona, your character and stuff like that. And I think Yeri is, he's now deflecting and trying to get that title shot back, because he won after that UFC 300, and now he wants that title shot back. So he's trying to say, no, because last time it was an early stoppage. So in all sports, you have to be egotistical and think you're always going to win. And then there's the thing where you can't accept the fact that you lost, so you'll find an excuse to deflect. And then there's the other thing where you're tailoring what you're saying to the press to get what you want. Trent Robinson right now is in that mode of he's so egotistical that he can't believe he's losing. So he's just finding someone else to blame because it can't possibly be his fault.
Yeah.
Or he's really, really trying to save his job and deflecting. That's the only two things.
Take some responsibility for yourself, Trent Robinson. Your team hasn't been underachieving for 5 years now because of one refereeing decision on the weekend. They're underachieving because of you, because you're not doing your job properly. Obviously, with a roster like that, to be underachieving for this many years is not acceptable. There's no excuse for it. And so he should be under pressure.
And I think, I talked about it at the beginning of the year in the preview and got hate for it. But the weak point in their spine, I said at the time that Brandon Smith was the weak point in the spine, and based on James Tedesco's last few years, that was the other weak point, but it would be overcome by the quality of the rest of the team, right? Problem is the rest of the team isn't overcoming that weak point in the spine, and so they're not playing very well. Even like Sam Walker and Luke Keary aren't doing very well. There's like not a lot of creativity. That could be just that halves issue that we've talked about at length, where we're overinflating the value of Sam Walker because of the quality of the halves in the rest of the league. But they don't look creative. It's 7 rounds in, they look tired. And all you want, they're not getting the rub of the green. Like, I think the Nelson Asafa-Solomona thing was like, there was actually fair reason to complain based on the rules, right? James Tedesco's trip again, like the Storm had fair reason to try to complain.
Yeah, exactly.
I think that was one of those things. Like, it was accidental. It was fully accidental. He didn't actually slide tackle. He stepped and fell over, and the momentum carried him that wrong way. But it was an attempted trip, and it was accidental. Accidental isn't an excuse. They just use it as an excuse to try and lower the charges. But yeah, like there's no
a trip.
Yeah, there's no reason.
Accidental or not.
Exactly. Everything is what it is, accidental or not, and that's why you get charged.
That's the thing. I'm really sick of this line that gets used in the game. Oh, this was an accident, or this was an accident. 99% of things that happen on the field are an accident. That's irrelevant. It's about the offence committed. Whether it's an accident or not is irrelevant.
If you can tell me off the top of your head any time it wasn't accidental, you should tell you how few there are. Like, I can't tell you how. I can't tell you off the top of my head, really. Like, I can't list like 10 accidental events that were bad. Okay. But I could tell you some that weren't accidents that were actually bad. Like Rengie Chase once did a rotational knee bar on. I can't remember who the actual player was, but in international, because Rengie Chase played for New Zealand, and one of the other players moved to a different country and started representing a different country, and he admitted like he was trying to tear his leg off, and he did like a rolling heel hook based knee bar thingy that was like terrible on the person's leg. So that's like a non-accident. And he admitted after. He got charged, he got suspended, he admitted after. Yeah, it wasn't an accident, it was a brain snap. I remember Matt Pryor once coat-hangered someone. It was when it was Jonathan Thurston. He coat-hanged Jonathan Thurston. That wasn't an accident, but Matt Pryor's head was in a really bad space because I believe his brother had died like a few days before. He shouldn't have been playing. Like ones that aren't accidents are so rare. It's irrelevant saying something is accident. You only have to point out the ones that aren't accidents.
Yeah, I'm sure Dom Young didn't mean to clock Blake Taff in the head and knock him out and get sent off. And I'm sure the referee probably knew that, but the referee still sent him off because he clocked him in the head.
Because the recklessness of it is what gets you sent off. Whether it's accidental or not, it was reckless, careless. I don't know which one's worse. I think reckless is worse. Yeah, who cares? But yeah, they're all accidents. Everything's an accident. Unless they're punching them in the face.
The only thing I saw on the weekend that wasn't an accident was when Hetherington and Reid Marnie both, and we will get to that in a moment, when Hetherington and Reid Marnie both got sent to the bin, and Hetherington actually came out of the Knights dressing room to push Reid Marnie. That's the only thing I've seen that you could say was definitively wasn't an accident. Exactly.
And that's what I mean. Like, it's so non-accidents are so few and far between. They're all accidents, so it's irrelevant. James Tedesco accidentally tripped whoever it was.
Pappenhausen,
yeah, and like Pappenhausen said, like, it's bad. He said it on a podcast. Like, it was bad because he's had so many knee and shoulder ankle issues. Like, he immediately was like panicked. was an accident. James Tedesco is not that type of player. I said to someone in a comment on Reddit, Mitchell Pearce mentioned he played soccer when he was young. Seems like James Tedesco's picked up some of those soccer habits. Yeah, it was an accident, and he should have got in trouble. Nobody on the Roosters side is complaining about that. Of course they're not going to.
Yeah, of course they're not. Yeah. What's your thoughts on that, Trent? Where's your comment on that?
They'll only comment when they're asked specifically about it, and that's the other thing. Like, reporters won't ask. Like, when he's complaining about the Nelson Asafa Solomona thing,
what do you think of the Tedesco
why doesn't a reporter pop up and go, but mate, thanks for your thoughts on Nelson Asafa Solomona. What did you think of James Tedesco's sliding tackle on Pappenhausen?
Yeah.
And then you know what he's going to say? Oh, that was an accident. Yeah. And continuing on with Robinson, he's not having a good week, the poor old man.
Yes.
So he's but there's a few coaches right now who aren't getting along with the reporters.
Yes. This was an interesting one that came before that game against the Storm. Now, he's had a spat with a reporter. Now, the reporter's asked the following question. I'll just read it out. He's talking about Joey Manu. Yeah, he says, when Joey plays like he did last week against the Knights, that's obviously the week before. We're talking about a question that was asked before that game against the Storm. The reporter goes on to say, everyone says he has got to play fullback, but obviously with Teddy there, what does Teddy bring to that role that doesn't get shown up in stats and the super coach points? Now, Robinson has sort of lashed out at this reporter. He said, I don't think I'll answer that question, to be honest. I'm not talking about super coach at a media conference. If they don't see what Teddy brings, then I'm not the right guy to answer it. Teddy is an exceptional fullback. It's just naive to ask that question, really. What I think about an Australian and New South Wales premiership winning fullback and what he brings to the game. Watch the game. Now, I thought this was a very harsh response from Robinson. Look, the question is it was a bit of a clunky one. The only real problem I had with the question was don't bring up super coach points. Like, that's just silly. And so I think the problem for the reporter was he left himself open for Robinson to really
that was the thing.
Pick him apart.
Super coach is not an indication of anything.
That's right. Talk about the stats. That's all right. What does he show that doesn't get shown up in the stats? That's fine. And that's where my issue is with Robinson. The reporter says shown up in stats and super coach points. So Robinson could have just said, he could have just said, look, I'm not answering the super coach part of it. I don't care about that. But he could have said, he does a lot that doesn't get shown up in the stats. Very easy way to answer it. But no, he's lashed out. He said, I'm not answering your question. And this just makes him look like a really angry man that we know he is at the moment. He's overly emotional during games. He's banging on the glass. This is really strange behaviour from Trent Robinson again.
His job's got to be on the line. He knows he's not performing, but I think it changes. He's been there since, 2013? Yeah, so it's 11 years. I think a change of scenery might do him good.
I mean, he's going to get a gig somewhere else if they get rid of him. He's got 3 premierships.
I know he got it on the rundown, but I mentioned last week Brad Arthur's job is in danger. Yeah. There's a few coaches whose jobs are in danger. There's, obviously, Demetriou is the middle of the season sacking. But, Adam O'Brien, Brad Arthur, they're the other ones. They're the other ones at the end of the year where they might be looking for a new gig. And Robbo is that one that actually he could move to another team. And,
I just thought that was a really arrogant way of answering, where he says, what I think about an Australian and New South Wales and a premiership winning fullback and what he brings to the game. Watch the game. Oh, come on, mate. He's giving you a chance to pump up Tedesco's tyres. And as his coach, that's what you should be doing. Use the opportunity to give Tedesco, to pump Tedesco up a bit. Don't lash out at the reporter. I thought it was a really poor display when, all right, the question got a bit clunky where he brought up super coach points. But, it wasn't that bad. Like, that's an overreaction.
I get frustrated with the people talking about guys like Joey Manu over James Tedesco after one game in which Joey Manu played exceptionally well in a game where the Roosters only just scraped through with a win. Excuse me. That's like that. What's his name? Lachlan Galvin at the Tigers. after one good game, he's suddenly an immortal. You know,
so suddenly they don't need Jerome Luai anymore, apparently.
He could have said that, something like that. You know, it's
since.
like Manu's played fullback a few times. He's a good fill-in, but his best position is centre. Yeah, he had a good game against the Knights. But, you know, there's so many things you could have said. Just calm down, bro.
But the reporter gave him an opportunity.
Yeah.
All he was doing was giving him an opportunity to pump Tedesco up. And he refused to answer it. I'm really getting really irritated by Trent Robinson at the moment, I have to say.
Yeah, you know, it'll all go away. Like I think Craig Gower said it'll all go away if they start winning a few games.
Yeah, that's true, right?
It'll all go away. Only Ricky Stewart complains when they win. You know,
exactly. Yeah.
If they can string a few wins together, you see, like if they win tomorrow and then go on a run like 3-4 weeks, Robbo will be the most nicest guy ever. He'll have nothing to complain about. Like he'll just go. Like they got the. Think about it, like they win tomorrow, right? Beat the Dragons, which is not so good of a thing, but they'll jump the Dragons in the ladder. They'll be on top above the Dragons because it's 11th and 9th. Then they beat the Broncos. Then they beat the Warriors. Then they beat the Sharks. Get 4 wins in a row against those 3 good teams. No, Trent Robinson's not going to be complaining about nothing. For the rest of the year, he has a thing. Like
what we've got to say about Trent Robinson, though,
they got a hard run for the next few weeks.
He's never been tested out with he's never in his 11 years at the Roosters. He's never had a dud roster. Never. He's always had a really.
I think he's missed the
roster.
finals once, right?
Yeah, look, off the top of my head, I don't know how many times he's missed the finals, but
they've got a hard run for the next few weeks.
All I'm saying is he's never been put in a situation where he's had a struggling roster. He's never been in a Shane Flanagan situation. That Shane Flanagan's in this year where he is taking over a struggling team and he's had to really, get the best out of a struggling team. He's never been tested out like that. He's never been put in that position. He's always had one of the best rosters in the comp. And he's always added really good recruits every year. Yeah,
even when he took over, I think in 2012, the Roosters missed the 8.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, and then he took over.
But what he came in with was
Maloney,
ridiculous.
Sonny Bill and Jennings in 2013 when he took over.
When he took over something much better than what he started with. So yeah, he's never been in Flanagan's shoes where he's had to walk into somewhere where he couldn't buy anyone.
Yeah.
They came 13th in 2012. Oh, Bulldogs came first.
Minor premiers.
They got a hard run for the next few weeks, so you're going to expect to hear a lot from Trent Robinson. They got, as I said, Broncos, then Warriors, and Sharks. Then the Raiders in Canberra. Then the Cowboys. Then they get a bye in round 14, and that's when it kind of gets a little bit easier, and they play Eels, Bulldogs, Wests, Dragons again. So they've got a hard 5-6 weeks, and then a middle of the road or soft few weeks that. They could really stay out of the 8 for the next they stay out of the 8 for the next 10 rounds as possible, and then it just gets hard again. It really there's nothing after that when you head into round 20 and then run home. They got Storm, Sea Eagles, Dolphins. Then they finish up the year really, really easily with the Titans, Raiders, Rabbitohs.
Yeah.
But they got a hard run for the next few weeks, and that period after the bye where I say it gets a bit easier. It's Eels, Bulldogs, West Tigers, Dragons. All 4 of those teams have that middle of the road potential to flip the script. All 4 of them right now, based on how they're going for the past 6 weeks. So the Roosters could have a super hard next 10 rounds, and then what's going to happen? They could very well end up bottom of the ladder, not bottom because Titans are there.
I think if they have another season where and I'm not going to fall into this trap of saying, they need to make the 8 and then they make the 8 and lose in week 1 or week 2 and don't fire a shot. If they have another season where they're not in contention, and by that I mean don't make the last 4 at the end of the year, well then I think, at the end of the season, he's really going to have some questions to answer. And then I think if they start next year struggling again after that, then I think the pressure will really be on him. Yeah. I think he's probably maybe got another 12 months up his sleeve.
Well, they're out of the 8 now, and they could stay out of the 8 for the next 3 months, given their next run. And then they're really going to struggle to get into the 8 at all. It's really, really a high possibility. It's not even they're going to go. I can't see them But again, wait till tomorrow and see.
Yeah, we'll see what happens.
Tomorrow, it could be they really put it on the Dragons, and then you'll see them put it on the Warriors, Sharks, Raiders, Cowboys, going to their bye, come out rested and beat up all those like middle of the tier teams, and they could be first on the ladder.
Yeah. It's interesting how you're placing that much emphasis on the one game.
There's no science to it.
Then again, I'm not a Roosters or Dragons
It's just how we feel amongst my circle of friends. He needs to come down. But so still on the Roosters, fans have had a blow up because of the way Brad Fittler commentates in the Roosters versus Storm game, accusing him of having biased commentary. He's on Channel 9, right?
Yes.
I wouldn't know. But I watched the Dragons game on Fox, and so over the course of the weekend I watched like 4 or 5 games. The Dragons game, I thought, man, they are really biased to the Warriors. The whole Fox commentary. The Dragons were like on top, at one point I can't remember the actual.
So you thought the Fox commentators were biased towards the Warriors?
Yeah, hardcore. So I don't see any issue with I was about to say Brad Pitt. Brad Fittler being biased, if he was, because I don't think I've ever watched an unbiased commentary except for Rabs. Yeah. So at the 40th minute, when the Dragons went into the half-time, right? They had scored 4 times and the Warriors had scored once. Zach Lomax kicked that two-point field goal, one of those. They were up by like 20 points. And they were going into sheds. The Fox commentators were going, the Warriors are still in this game. All they've got to do is score first and they can come back and win it. It's one thing you know about the Warriors. I was like, are you kidding? Have you watched this first half of football? The Warriors are not in the game. So fans complaining about Brad Fittler being biased. I mean, have you ever watched Phil Gould commentate a Bulldogs game?
I mean, to be honest, there was a long time there where Phil Gould worked for the Roosters, where I thought he was biased in the Roosters' favour. Maybe it's harder for me to see. But to be honest, I don't think, because I don't watch Channel 9, I watch Fox, but I don't think that Channel 9, well, certainly when Phil Gould was the general manager at Penrith, Channel 9 wouldn't roster him on the Penrith games. And I'm assuming that it's the same now that he's the general manager of the Bulldogs. Never watched that crap. I don't think Gould would be put in the position where he'd be commentating a Bulldogs game. But anyway, the main thing that stuck out for me with this Fittler commentary was when Cam Munster was sent to the sin bin, Fittler said that Munster should have been fined from the NRL for walking off the field rather than jogging. And people sort of went, well, what, really? Like, fined for that?
Yep.
I mean,
I think so. They changed the rule. I didn't see the Roosters Storm game I listened on the radio. So I don't know what.
But I wonder if he would have said the same thing if it had been a Rooster.
I mentioned it earlier this year when Latrell was sin bin for Tedesco. He should have been fined because he sauntered off. They made that clear. They made it clear. It was a few years ago. You have to jog off the field because when there's a sin bin, the players used to argue a bit, say goodbye to their friends, give the finger to the opposing player, get a little bit more argue, tell the trainer some stuff, and take like 3 or 4 minutes to walk off the field, walk to the far end of the complete opposite end for where they were, and like give their boys a rest. Drag out the sin bin. Sin bin clock doesn't start till you're off the field, but they would drag it out. And so the NRL made a rule that you got to get the hell off the field as fast as you can because they know what they're doing.
Yeah, and I think they sent an edict. The question I have, though, is would he have said the same thing if it had been a Roosters player?
Didn't somebody else get sin-binned in that
game?
No, a Roosters player get sin-binned in that game. Didn't 2 go to the bin?
In Thursday night's game?
Yeah.
I'll just look it up. Usually if they send one, they send another one because they've got to square it up. But I'm going to just look that up.
Gowie, there's no square up in rugby league.
No, it was just Munster.
Oh, okay.
Munster was the only one. But that's the thing, did and again, I didn't listen to their commentary, but I wonder if Brad Fittler blew up about Tedesco tripping Pappenhausen. I wonder whether he blew up about This is the thing. This is where people will go, well, would you have said the same thing if the shoe was on the other foot? And that's where you get people saying, well, it could be biased commentary.
Yeah, like I said, I find all the commentary to be super biased.
To be honest, I've got to give my honest opinion. I think Fittler, I think he's painful to listen to.
I think all of Channel 9
I think it's just listening to him commentate. The whole time I'm thinking, I think they could do better than this, in their coverage, to be honest.
Yeah, I find all of Channel 9 painful to listen to. Sorry to all the players that I liked as players, but I can't listen to it. But in the Roosters versus Bulldogs game, when Victor Radley got sin-binned, he jogged off. All right. So you can say, we could hazard a guess that Brad Fittler wouldn't have said it to a Roosters player. But the thing is, you can go back and look at Roosters players; they don't do it, and it is actually against the rules, and it is a finable offence.
But this is the thing. So you only get fined. We're tripping now. We're tripping a player, which I think is a pretty serious offence. You only get fined for that. So if we're going to say that players should be fined for, you know what I mean? You get fined for tripping and you get fined for walking off rather than running off for a sin.
Tripping is a charge, right? Or is it?
Yeah, but they only get fined. Yeah. They don't even get. How do they not get suspended for tripping?
And they've copied the fine thingy from AFL, I believe, because that's what they do. I don't like the fines. The funniest one ever was Ryan Madison taking a suspension over a fine. That was scummy as. But I don't like the fines. I hate them. I'm okay with them for things that aren't charges. If it's a charge, it should be a bannable offence. Tripping is super dangerous. Actually. It really is.
Yeah, how does the game not suspend players for tripping? It's so bad.
They get the points and the carryover points.
You could argue it's worse than hitting someone head high in the tackle. Because tripping is, I don't know how, if you trip somebody, how could that be deemed accidental to trip somebody? You mean to trip somebody, right?
Oh, James Tedesco one was an accident. He changed direction, but he tried to change the direction, but the momentum carried him forward, and it ended up that he stuck his leg out. He wasn't aiming to trip. There have been aiming to trips. I don't think it should be a fine, though. I don't think anything that warrants a charge should be a fine. Fine them for not going to the sin bin. Fine them for, misconduct with, if they were to swear at fans or something like that. That's a fineable offence, because it's not a chargeable offence. You think about it in real life. Real life. I get charged with assault, I might get a fine as the lowest possible thing, but there are some things, like a parking ticket is a fine, it's not a charge. Things that are charges should be bannable, carryover points and all that stuff. I hate the fines. I hate them so much.
Especially for tripping. Yeah. It's a serious offence. It should be an offence that carries lengthy suspensions.
I think so.
So anyway, we move forward.
Sorry, just sending a message. Speaking of the Jack Hetherington.
Speaking of players getting,
What the hell was Hetherington thinking? What?
Yeah, well, he should have got more than a one-game suspension. Yeah. For him to wait there in the dressing rooms and see that Reid Marnie had been sent to the bin as well, and then walk out of the dressing room, meet him in the tunnel, and make contact with him, that's far... In my view, that's a 5 or 6 week suspension.
Yeah, what is he doing?
Off the field in the dressing rooms? You can't have that. The message that sends to kids, it's one thing for it to happen on the field in the heat of battle. To do that in the tunnel
that's premeditated.
Only get one game?
See, that's not accidental.
Exactly.
There's no way, shape or form that's accidental. Walked out of the dressing room, acts like a fool. It was such weird vision. You look at it and you think they're just having a laugh, and then it becomes heat, and you're like, is that... What is he doing?
And why did Reid Marnie get sin-binned? All he did was just sledge him and stir him up a bit. That's just part of the game. If you take the bait, well, that's bad luck. You shouldn't get sin-binned for that. And Reid Marnie got a $1,000 fine just for a bit of
one thing we know about
sledging on the field. What's that about?
One thing we know about today is words hurt. In the modern society. I watched Ricky Gervais Armageddon, and that's one of his jokes. God's making humans. It's and in a few thousand years, words are going to hurt them. But yeah, you definitely don't get sin binned for sledging. That's nonsense. The whole thing started out bizarre. Sin bin for sledging, weird. Then Hetherington goes off, goes down the tunnel. Then Marnie goes off, goes down the tunnel. Hetherington comes out, looks like he's playing around with a big smile on his face, and then bang, like it's just on, and you're like, what the? Why did the Hetherington's trainer let him come out of the room as well? Like, why didn't he say, where are you going, idiot? Get back inside.
That's the thing, and clearly they thought it was a problem, those who were around, because they had to pull Hetherington away before it escalated.
And then only one game. See, that is not accidental. There's nothing accidental.
Only one game for making physical contact with another player in the tunnel, in the sheds? Are you serious?
I saw a snippet on TikTok of Phil Gould talking about him and why Hetherington used to be at the Bulldogs, is it?
Yes.
Yeah, and that's why Phil Gould actually got rid of him. Because he's a bit of a hothead and does stupid stuff. He didn't say it exactly like that.
Gets suspended every second week.
I didn't say it like that, but he was kind of like, implying. It was just a snippet. I don't know what the total context was.
Players who get suspended every second week, they're no good to you. Because
they get put on the list.
Use to you if they're sitting on the sidelines suspended.
They get put on the list, and then it's just like Victor Radley. Victor Radley got sin bin for a hip drop tackle that apparently wasn't a hip drop.
You're right, they get put on the list, so... But that's what happens when you're a repeat offender, right?
Exactly.
That's life. That's the way it goes.
And it looks like Andrew Johns was right about Kalyn Ponga.
Yeah, well, this is real trouble for Newcastle.
Well, their season's over.
Yeah, they're done. That's the start and the end of it, really. Ponga's likely to miss 12 weeks. This debate about whether he was going to be picked in the Origin team, well, that's now just put to one side. There's no need to have that debate now. He won't take any part in the Origin series.
So it was his foot, not his hemi, but the hemi was also injured.
I think it was his hip. Yeah, it was his hip, I think. He had a pre-existing hip injury that he took into the game, but the foot's a separate injury. But there's a lot of people saying, well, he shouldn't have taken the field with the hip injury. He was clearly affected by the hip injury. Yeah. And I know it was a different injury. I know the foot's a different injury. But if he didn't go into the game, well, he doesn't suffer the foot injury.
The thing with legs that is very well known is one injury, like a hip injury, will... you're standing on your legs, okay? So if you have an injury in some part of your leg, the rest of your legs will take over and compensate for that injury. And so that's one of the reasons why you see people who do their ACL and then the next year do their other ACL. It's because for the past year they've been putting additional strain on their ACL. And, for anyone who's ever had leg injuries, you should go look up Knees Over Toes Guy on Instagram and get into his program, because one of the things that his program does is all of the exercises he's doing it's like 15 minutes a week, 3 times a week, super easy. For the no weight one, all of the exercises are built around strengthening the muscles around those important muscles, so you can support those important muscles, especially when you have an injury. So it's the fact that he had a hip injury means the rest of his legs will compensate for the hip injury, and then he's more susceptible to other injuries.
There you go. So there's a link then.
Yeah, there always is.
Yeah.
And so it's like people will do their ACL and then come back and do their MCL in the same leg straight away. Or people will do their MCL and then do their ACL, and then the next year do their opposite ACL. And it's because there's a whole chain reaction that happens unconsciously of the rest of your other leg or the rest of your leg compensating for the broken bit. John Danaher, the greatest jiu-jitsu coach of all time, he talks about it where he injured his leg and then he's only 55 or something like that, or maybe 60 now. He's had 2 hip replacements and 2 knee replacements or something like that, because he injured his leg. He didn't rehab it and fix it properly, so his other leg went. So then his hips were overcompensating for the fact that his legs were broken. And now that guy walks with a limp perpetually. They can't fix it. He's broken forever. So that's what happens. That's legitimately what happens. And, Joey was criticised for saying they should take Kalyn Ponga off. When was it, last week?
Would have been last week or the week before. Yeah, it was recently.
This was what he feared. this is why he was saying it. He didn't think Kalyn Ponga should be out there because he'd either aggravate the injury, continue injury, and then be out for a extended period.
And that's what the Newcastle Knights staff are going to have to answer to now, that they've put him out there in this state. Clearly he wasn't 100%. And so it's a real, you sort of think a team doing that in round 7, playing their star player when he's injured because obviously they're desperate for a win. That's a real desperation play, and it's backfired on them spectacularly because now he's out for 12 weeks.
Exactly.
And their season's gone.
Yeah.
So them being desperate in trying to win one game by playing him when they shouldn't have has now cost them their whole season. And their season's over. He'll miss 12 weeks. There's even with him there, I didn't think they were any chance of making the 8. Now they're absolutely zero chance of making the 8.
What I see is I think they'll now finish lower than the Dragons.
I think we can be. I think you should give more credit to your Dragons. I think you're being a bit
no
too
faith, bro.
pessimistic about them. I think they've shown a lot more.
We'll see tomorrow.
What I thought they were going to show.
Oh yeah, for sure. They're definitely doing better.
There's no question the Dragons are going to finish above the Knights now. No question.
And that's an indicator, they can't even beat the Dragons. But we'll see after tomorrow how I feel about the Dragons next week on Friday.
I think you need to be more positive about the Dragons.
It's years and years.
You've been burnt too many times.
And there's history there, like even pre-2010. it's no matter what, Dragons are the ton.
Yeah, they have not had a great time of it recently, but they might be about to turn the corner.
So. Now, we've discussed Josh Schuster before.
Yes.
How he should go to the Titans.
Yes.
Today it came out, or last night it came out, that the payout is going to be $1 million.
Yes, so this idea was floated before that they weren't going to have to pay out a cent because he apparently had weight clauses and he didn't meet his weight. Well, that's untrue now. He is going to get a payout of close to $1 million apparently. So this contract that he was supposed to be on was worth $800,000 a season. That $1 million payout averages out to be $250,000 this year and the next 3 years. So this is the thing, and that's $250,000 that gets eaten into their cap for that amount of years.
I'd be going for his manager. Every player, if I was them, I'd be jumping on board with his manager. What the guy negotiated was amazing. Manly.
This is the thing. Manly have gotten out of the contract now, but it's going to cost them $250,000 a year for the next 3 years. Mm-hmm. That's a huge chunk of your. That's a good back rower you can get for $250,000.
Yeah, upgrade to someone
a half
to keep.
Decent sort of winger, for
upgrading one of your juniors to keep them.
So someone's got to be answerable to that. You can't just be burning your cash in the salary cap. It's burning $250,000 a year.
Manly and their terrible salary cap management that continues, and everyone wanted to blame Des, but it just continues.
It's been described as perhaps the worst contract ever agreed to by an NRL club. That this unproven player they signed on $800,000.
22 years old.
An unproven 22-year-old was on $800,000 a year. Seriously, are you kidding? Has anyone ever watched him play and gone, "Oh, there's a kid worth $800,000 a year"? It's never happened because he's not worth that amount.
It's really. I thought
not even half that
until this morning when I read the news. I thought Josh Schuster was like 27, and then this morning. I saw he's 22 years. I'm like, who signed this guy for $800,000? It was so crazy. Just this morning, I learned it's 22 years old. He's going to be in the NRL for the next. But who's going to want him? Well, quite a few.
Someone might take him on a cheap price.
There's limits to what the cheap price they can take him. We talked about it before. He's been valued at $800,000 a year now, so there's limits to how cheap they can go. Like Zach Lomax had to go to the Eels for $650.
But surely, if you can't find a club on any amount, well, then surely they can't.
There's something weird about it that I have not been able to find exact explanation for it.
You can't just say, you can't play for anyone because you're on $800,000.
I think it has to do when you move in the middle of a contract. But I don't know. That's the thing. I've tried to.
There must be, let's say that no one signs him for the next 3 months.
Got to go to England.
But there's got to be.
Go to England.
Well, but it's got to, you got to go, well, I mean, the guy would rather play on minimum wage than not play at all.
Not allowed. They're not allowed. They're really not allowed.
Even after a certain amount of time.
I don't know exactly what it is, but yeah, they're not allowed to. Like, there's something to do with middle of. I've only read snippets of it, and I can't find a good explanation for how it works. But there was a whole thing around Zach Lomax where the Eels were originally considering him offering him $200,000 a year,
surely,
and they weren't allowed.
Surely there's got to be something that goes, well, if this guy doesn't get a contract anywhere, well, then he can come in somewhere on a low. Because otherwise he's going to be unemployed.
Go to England. Because, you know, the one of the things around it is obviously to prevent managers from exploiting it as well.
But I guess, true, but this is in a different category, I think. This is a scenario where clearly he's been overpriced, Manly, for whatever, and that's the thing. No one else was even bidding for him.
Yeah,
that's what makes this so bizarre. They've paid $800,000 a year for an unproven 22-year-old who nobody else was bidding for. So surely this is in another category of, hang on, this club's got it way off the mark here. This is a guy maybe only worth about $300,000 a year. So I'm
gonna do some research on it, more research. Like I said, I haven't been able to find clarity around it, but because
I haven't read that anyway. In this instance,
I read it about Zach Lomax. That was the thing. I read it about Zach, and because then there's other exploitations available where other clubs could offer you overs with no intention of paying it to you to force other clubs to offer more. You know. Like, say I'm going to offer you $1 million. I'm not going to pay you $1 million. And when you come there, like, you can go like, oh, no, I changed my mind. Because I've offered you $1 million. Now you're worth $1 million to everyone else. Yeah. And so other people are like, oh, we're only going to give you $500. And the NRL goes, no, he's worth $1 million. And then when no one else can cover that $1 million, you come back to me and I go, you know.
It's like the person who goes to the auction and just bids to up the price.
I'm like, you know what? Yeah. Seeing as no one else wants you, I'll only give you $500,000.
I mean.
Yeah, I'll have it up we'll have a research of it for next podcast on Friday because I only read it about Zach Lomax. I don't know if it even applies to Josh Schuster.
Yeah, that's the thing. In relation to Schuster, I haven't read anything about it. But anyway, I mean, Manly. Again, they're going to have to pay him $250 a year, which is just senseless, really, given that he won't be playing for them. But that does free up $550,000 in their cap, and we think that might be used to re-sign the forwards like Nathan Brown or Matt Lodge, before they sort of look at going to market. But anyway.
And now on to the Rabbitohs, our favourite topic.
Yes.
And Latrell Mitchell.
Mm-hmm.
So Michael Maguire organised a Origin camp, and apparently all the Rabbitohs didn't go, or an Origin meeting, including Latrell Mitchell, Cody Walker, and Damien Cook.
To be honest, I'm happy about that because that says to me that he's looking purely on form, and the Rabbitohs are they're together with the Titans, the most out of form team in the NRL. So I like that the Rabbitohs players are not getting a look.
Rabbitohs are off the bottom of the ladder without playing a game this week.
But that's the thing. I mean, they've at least won a game and the Titans haven't. So that's a little anomaly in the ladder, isn't it? The Titans are getting a bye that for a while I'm not sure who's still in front on the ladder.
No, it's Rabbitohs. They got off the bottom of the ladder this week.
I mean, the
now
Titans were ahead of the Rabbitohs on the ladder without having won a game because of the bye.
Well, their points differential is way better.
But anyway, I mean, Latrell Mitchell wouldn't get anywhere near an Origin team at the moment.
Well, that's because I mentioned it when Craig Gow was on last week. Like, he's not even in the top 5 fullbacks, right, for New South Wales. Not like for the league. On current form for New South Wales. Top 5 fullbacks for New South Wales, right? You'd have to go like Dylan Edwards, Tom Trbojevic, James Tedesco probably in there.
I think if you
Ryan Pappenhausen, Clint Gutherson they'd probably be the top 5 fullbacks for New South Wales. Not in any order.
Yeah, if I was naming a New South Wales team today, I think I'd go Edwards at fullback. I'd go Trbojevic and Crichton in the centres, and I'd probably have Lomax, Toto and Addo Carr fighting it out for the 2 wing spots. Those 3 players into the 2 wing spots. That's where your backline would sort of look if you were picking a New South Wales.
He's not even in the top 5 fullbacks. And when you go for that, then in the next step, his other position he would play would be centres. He's not even in the top 5 centres because you have like Stephen Crichton. I don't know who else is centres, to be honest. I can't really remember, but there's definitely 5 centres ahead of him.
Yeah, I mean, Tom Trbojevic, if he's picked in the centres, he's
all the fullbacks that we just mentioned, except for James Tedesco, could move to the centres. Jack Whiten is ahead of Latrell Mitchell in the centres.
It's interesting, Craig Gowers wanted Jack Whiten at 5'8".
Yeah. I said that earlier this year, if you remember. I think he's a good 5'8". But yeah, there's definitely 5 centres in front of Latrell as well. And when you're getting into past the 5, especially in the centre where there's 2 of them, when you're getting past the 5 mark, it's really, you have no chance. There is no chance. If we go back many, many years ago when where was it for the halves, and it ended up being for one game Sean Timmins, right? Yeah, he was the fifth choice. Yeah. And that's if you're getting to the fifth or sixth choice. I remember it at the time. Like if you're getting to that point, they don't even look for guys who are in that position. They don't want the 6th best fullback. What they will do is instead they'll go to another position and find one of the top 3 or 4 guys who can fill in. Like they got Sean Timmins to play 5'8" instead of the 5th best 5'8".
And that's a similar line of thinking to Craig Gower. Craig Gower seems to think, there's no glaring option at 5'8" for New South Wales, so he wants to see Jack Whiten given the gig. Yeah. Similar line of thinking.
Exactly. Like rather than going and finding the 5th best 5'8", they'll find someone from another position who's in the top 1 or 2 or 3 who can fill in. And it's the same with centres, Like can't really name 5 centres across the league, to be honest, but like you just said, Tom Trbojevic might fill in at centre. Because you got to have to...
Well, if you're going to go... And look, I agree with Craig Gower. I'd have Dylan Edwards over Tedesco at fullback for New South Wales. And I went through... In our podcast with Craig the other night, I went through Dylan Edwards' metre statistics for his metres in each game this year, and it's just off the charts. It's unbelievable, the numbers he's putting up. So if you're going to put Dylan Edwards at fullback... Well, then Tom Trbojevic has got to go in the centres if he's fit.
And he can play in the centres, and he does well in the centres. So Latrell Mitchell's out. Like, he's not going to get...
You've got to go Stephen Crichton over Latrell Mitchell.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, I'm not saying Stephen Crichton's lit the world on fire this season.
I think he has the last 2 weeks.
Well, that's the thing. He's coming into some form. The game against Newcastle was his best game of the season. And you'd have him ahead of Latrell Mitchell.
Yeah,
no question about it.
He's probably in the top 3 centres for New South Wales. He doesn't even hit the 5. And Latrell Mitchell is not in the top 5 fullbacks. Definitely not in the top 5 centres. If you're outside the top 5 centres, if you're getting to the 5th of 6 centres, you're going to your fullbacks. Dylan Edwards is the fullback because he's the number 1 choice, just say. And it's like, all right, we're going to have Stephen Crichton, we're going to have Jack Whiten. Whiten's injured or not playing. All right, we'll move to the next best centre. I don't know who it is right now. Then the next best centre not available. It's Tom Trbojevic. We're going to our fullbacks now. Same for the wing. If Zach Lomax is unavailable because he's currently the best winger, Addo Carr is in fine form. You start going like, which of our top 5 fullbacks that we haven't picked because we've only picked 1 fullback can play wing, and we fill them in. Then we go, which of the top 5 centres, if we have no fullbacks, which of the top 5 centres can play wing? You're not getting past there, and Latrell Mitchell's so far out of all of them, he's not going to get picked.
Yeah, I even saw it reported that, I think Alex McKinnon floated the possibility that Latrell could be switched to 5'8" at South. And then there was even a report saying, that could put him into contention for the number 6 jersey for the Blues. Like, come on.
No.
Like, that's far too much that would need to happen.
You think he's going to be ahead of Jerome Luai for the Blues, And
that's the thing. Craig Gower obviously doesn't even think Jerome Luai should be the Blues 5'8", let alone Latrell Mitchell, who's way out of form, hasn't played there. Latrell Mitchell is really given every opportunity by everybody, isn't he? And even when his form is this bad, people are still even talking about him possibly playing 5'8" for New South Wales. Come on. Like, give me a break. He's just not playing well enough to be in Origin selection contention at the moment.
Not at all. But continuing with the Rabbitohs, Sam Burgess has finally chimed in and said he's not coming back. Nobody's coming to the Rabbitohs except Jason Demetriou this week, Sam. But I think Demetriou should worry about the fact that Sam Burgess has now said, I'm not coming back to the Rabbitohs. Why does he need to say it unless he's been approached?
Yeah, and he was asked that, I think, after one of his games as Warrington coach there. But it was interesting the way that Sam Burgess answered the question. I mean, very direct in answering it. He says, look, I think he said... this was his quote. He was asked, any chance heading to the Rabbitohs this season? Sam Burgess was asked by Sky Sports. He says, no, none whatsoever. I've got a 2-year contract here and I'm going to honour that. So if we read between the lines, what happens after the 2 years there, Sam?
Yeah.
I think we can say that if he does a good job in his 2 years at Warrington, which it looks like he's going to do, he's made a good start there.
Yeah, I'm just trying to check the ladder on their website.
Yeah, look, I haven't looked at the ladder, but from what I've read, that he's actually made a good...
He's fourth. They're fourth now.
Fourth, yeah. And sorry, how many teams in that competition now?
12.
Okay, so fourth out of 12 teams.
He's fourth, tied with St Helens and Wigan as well.
So fourth out of 12 teams, that's a good start for Burgess.
6 wins, 2 losses.
Yeah.
Hasn't had a bye.
Yeah, that's a really good start. But I think from those quotes... I think that they're just looking to get through the 2 years without Sam Burgess South, and I think there's a good chance looking at that he's going to be back coaching there in a couple of years' time.
He might be there
after
next
his Warrington deal expires.
He could come back next year.
Look, I'll take him at his word that he'll see out the contract, but
money talks.
He hardly said, "Oh no, I'm going to be here for the long term." He said, "I'm going to honour my 2-year contract."
Money talks, and so does Russell Crowe. So.
Yeah, it's the old line, isn't it? It's not what they say, it's what they don't say.
Yeah, exactly. But Cam Murray has defended Jason Demetriou. Finally, a player has come out and defended the coach. And strangely, Cam Murray, the guy I feel most sorry for.
Yeah, I mean, the captain's going to defend the coach. Of course he is. He's got no other option. What else is he going to do? But the fact of the matter is, we've been through the stats with South a lot of times. They won 4 of their last 13 games last year. They led the competition after 11 rounds, somehow missing the 8 from that point. They've won just 1 of their first 6 games in 2024, so they've only won 5 of their last 19 games. So I don't care what the captain says. If you won 5 of your last 19, the coach has got to take some responsibility. I don't care what the circumstances are. That's a terrible run of form for a team with not that bad a roster. And in my view, he's very lucky to still be somehow hanging on to his job as South's coach at the moment.
Well, I think Craig Gower really addressed it very well, that now they can't replace him because they'll look stupid. That's the thing. All of
that's
the
the
stuff.
The longer it goes on, the more you sort of think, well,
I think they're in panic stations right now because they want to get rid of him but don't know how now without looking stupid. And if they hold on to him for too long, they'll look stupid.
Well, yeah, I mean, the point was made that, now the other people in positions of authority at the club are worried that if they sack the coach, it's going to spark a mass clean out of the club. And maybe the CEO, Blake Solly's job will be in jeopardy if the coach, Jason Demetriou, gets sacked. So all of a sudden, what's the old line? If self-interest is in a horse race, always back it.
It's they're in a bit of a bind right now. They got no one. They can't find anyone to take the job. And if they sack Demetriou, they look stupid. If they keep him, they look stupid. If it keeps going on as it is, so they've got to come back from the bye and try and beat the Panthers or the Storm. The Storm.
It's almost as if they. It's sort of.
They're on the ANZAC Day.
It's really hard to get a read on how this is going to play out because we all thought, well, if they lose that game against the Sharks going into the bye, he's going to get sacked, and he hasn't been.
Too much was leaked.
So now you go. Well, what needs to happen now?
They're going to play Melbourne, and they're the current.
They're going to lose that. It's highly likely they'll lose that.
They're currently the longest odds, right?
Yeah,
so they're paying $4.70 to Melbourne's $1.20. It's the longest odds for the round. And then even the Gold Coast have better odds of beating the Warriors.
And then I think from memory they play Penrith the week after.
Yeah, Penrith the week after.
So Well, they're overwhelmingly likely to lose those 2 games and lose them convincingly. And then what do they do? Like you sort of go, well, they'll sack him then, but I thought they were going to sack him now and then. So
you just don't know. And
so where does this go from?
This is the thing. The only thing keeping the Rabbitohs off the bottom of the ladder is the Titans not winning any games, and the Titans have a better points differential. They almost got the Raiders. They almost did it, which is really why the Raiders are on the way down, I think. They got the Warriors this week, the Titans. Probably going to lose that. Then they got the Storm the week after. Definitely going to lose that. But all they got to do is win one game, and they'll be above the Rabbitohs, because the Rabbitohs' points differential is way worse.
And I think that's what the CEO is holding out for here. The CEO is really just hoping that somehow things just turn around and that this all goes away. Because I think the CEO, as has been pointed out, the CEO is worried that if the coach gets sacked, well, his job might be in jeopardy as well, and there might be a mass clean-out. So
over the next few weeks, I don't see the Titans winning any of their games until round 11, so 4 more weeks, and then they got the Knights with no Kalyn Ponga. If they put on a performance like they did against the Raiders, Titans will win, jump over the Rabbitohs, and really anchor the Rabbitohs to the bottom of the ladder. And then what are they going to do?
The CEO just wants this to play out in a certain way where there's just as little damage done as possible, so that he keeps his job, basically. At this point, it seems like, just giving Demetriou every opportunity to win some games and just make this go away for a while.
They're not going to win any of the next few games.
That's the thing. It's only going to intensify. And again, while he's left there, the players have an excuse. The coach can be their excuse. If they were to remove him and put in an interim coach, a Ben Hornby, for example, well, the excuse for the players would disappear, and they couldn't blame the coach anymore. Anyway, it's going to be interesting to see.
I'm telling you, I think if the Titans can win a game and the Rabbitohs continue to lose, and the Titans jump over the Rabbitohs and actually put them at the bottom of the ladder on equal points but less points differential, what can they say?
I'm just surprised. I'm really surprised that we know that the CEO is worried about his job going, and I get that. But I'm really surprised that the owners have not come in hard on this. I don't think, to be honest, to me, it looks as though from the outside looking in that Packer and Cannon Brooks, they don't seem to be too fast.
They don't care.
I think they're happy to defer to Russell Crowe on these matters. I'm really surprised that Russell Crowe hasn't thrown his weight around here on this sooner and tried to get to the bottom of it.
I wonder what he's doing that prevents him from... I really wonder what he's doing.
Well, I think he was overseas. He's come back. He's back in the country. Why he's not acting on this immediately, I have no idea. He's got the money to sort it out. If he needs to pay people out, he can. Money's not a problem with that group of owners that they've got. So I'm surprised that Mr. Crowe is not acting on this.
Yeah. Onto the Eels. Mentioned it before. Scott Sattler's mentioned that Brad Arthur's time as Eels coach may be coming to an end. I think it's highly likely. I think we talked about it before. The Eels usually, when the Brad Arthur's under the pump, the Eels usually step up and perform well, and this time they're not doing it. They're mired in that crappy position right now, middle of the road. They've got the Sea Eagles this week. I think at the end of the year, there's going to be a review. I don't think the Brad Arthur's job is in danger right now.
That's the thing. Well, if Jason Demetriou's job is if he's clinging onto his job, then I don't think Brad Arthur should be.
At least the Eels have won 3 games.
I think, as you say, I think you point out rightly that give him until at least the end of the year. But I mean, he's been there since 2014 as the full-time coach. He had an interim stint in 2012, but as full-time coach since 2014. That's 10 years now with no premiership. And for most coaches, apart from Ricky Stewart, obviously, 10 years without a premiership usually sort of spells the death
Eels,
knell for coaches.
Eels, everything about being at the Eels is the worst ever, man. They're still so mired in the 1980s that they can't be the halfback.
They haven't won one since 1986. So part of you might go, well, can we really be too hard on him for not winning a premiership when the club hasn't won one since '86? But then again, you got to draw the line.
I know he's got to go, but that's
draw the line.
It's the worst coach in the league, I think, because whenever you walk in as a halfback or a 5'8", you're compared to Peter Sterling. Whenever you walk in as a coach, you're compared to Jack Gibson. You know, like they are so stuck in this. It's funny, like you look at someone like the Dragons, right? And they had their run of 11 premierships and stuff like that, and then didn't win for however many years. But whenever anyone came into the club, it wasn't like, this is the next fullback, the best fullback that we've had since Graham Langlands. You know, it was a constant rolling door of like players that we accepted. Whereas with the Eels, seriously, they are still living in that 1980s, fans and members and everything alike, still living in that 1980s bubble where you can't go in without them being mentioned. Like, this is going to be the best coach since Jack Gibson. This is going to be the best half since Sterlo. This is going to be the best forward since Steve Price. What's his name? Ray Price. Then I think their culture needs to change. And Brad Arthur, because that kind of pressure compounds every year. They get further away. So whoever the next coach in after Brad Arthur, good luck, because you're not going to be. You're going to be the fourth or fifth coach since Jack Gibson, because they always take long-term coaches as well, maybe six, and you're going to be you're going to have the pressure of Jack Gibson's legacy on you there. Yeah.
And this is the thing, like that they might say, oh yeah, but Mitchell Moses has a long-term injury and that's really stifled us this season. And it's like, yeah, but you took the risk by signing him on huge money. You took the risk of giving a huge chunk of your salary cap to one player. And with that risk means that, well, if he goes down injured, well then, you may not have a lot else there because you've invested so much in the one player.
And they're a massive.
So they need to be held accountable for making that decision.
They're a massive juniors area, so they should have. Yeah, another clip I saw of Gus Gould talking about it, and the fact that they don't have a culture or identity of nurturing juniors anymore. Parramatta does. Penrith does, obviously, and now they lost that culture and identity, and now they do it like Gus Gould. You got to give him credit. Everyone does for bringing it back, and Bulldogs are doing well in the juniors and stuff like that. But Parramatta has one of those giant nurseries that.
And this is the thing, and I'm wary of giving the Bulldogs too much credit too early. We still need to see a lot more from them. I think we haven't seen them perform over long enough an amount of time to get too carried away. But what I would say is the Bulldogs knocked back the chance to sign Mitchell Moses and they held off. And maybe this was the reason why they held off. They held off because they didn't want to invest too much money in one player. If they had have invested too much money in him, well, maybe they'd be facing this scenario that Parramatta are of, him being out long term and not being able to cover him, and not being able to cover him not just in his position but in other positions because you've spent so much on him. So maybe the Bulldogs have dodged a bullet there, and that's the thing. If the Bulldogs had have signed Moses, well, they wouldn't have been able to sign some of these other star players who they've been able to bring in, your Stephen Crichtons, Viliami Kickows, etc., etc. So that's what you got to be mindful of as well. You can't just throw the big money. Sometimes it's not the wise move to throw the big money at the dominant half, because if they get a long-term injury, you're in a massive hole. And now Parramatta are in a massive hole and their coach's job is under serious pressure.
Yeah, I think he's one of the end of the year ones. Adam O'Brien as well will have that, because that's also comes down to coaching too, right? They've both in the same boat, really. They both lost their number one star player. They've invested everything in.
And that they made the recruitment decision to invest a lot in that player. So that if that player goes down injured, well, that's the risk you take. One player can go down injured. What do you do if that player goes down injured?
End of the year, they'll be in reviews.
Yes.
So yesterday, right? Braden Trindall was pulled over for a RBT.
Yes.
And got pinged for both drugs and alcohol. He was over the limit on alcohol.
Double whammy.
Yep, and also got pinged for cocaine, I believe is the thing. And so has been stood down by the Sharks. Not the NRL, the Sharks, which is good. I've talked so much at length that I don't think recreational drugs should be banned by the league, but they are. And I think it's on the clubs to manage that. Like, if he's driving around drunk and on drugs, I don't like anybody driving around drunk or on drugs at all. That's one of those ones that it's not an accident. You know,
No.
It's not an accident at all.
No,
and he should be suspended.
Yeah, police will allege Trindall returned a breath analysis reading of 0.124, more than twice the legal limit, on arrival at Miranda Police Station. He also allegedly returned a positive result to an illicit substance, understood to be cocaine, and was issued an infringement notice for driving with an expired licence.
Oh, even worse. Like, everything about that. He should be suspended. And that's the worst. People die on the roads, man.
Yeah.
They die.
You can't just... It's... You can't just overlook something. It's a serious... he could have killed someone.
Yeah, people die. They die on the roads. And we have terrible road deaths, mainly because of speeding and stuff, but also because of alcohol and drugs.
That's the thing. We all use the road. Everybody uses the road. He's putting other people at risk.
Yeah. Children, family. There's been historical things of, like, whole families being mowed down accidentally. Like, you know, so... Yeah, good.
This is a moment of stupidity from a 24-year-old who should know better. It's just... It's terrible to see somebody do this to their career and their livelihood.
See what happens.
He needs to learn from it, and he's going to learn the hard way by the looks of it.
We'll see what happens with the NRL, but I like the fact that the Sharks took the club straight away, suspended him. Like, that's the thing.
Yeah,
you know, that's the way it's got to be.
Quick action. They handled it as best as they could.
That's what I've talked about before. Like, I don't think cocaine should be illegal against the drug testing thing. But if you're a club and your player is rocking up after a night out on the nose beers, he's not going to be able to train properly. He's not going to be able to perform properly. So it's on the club to manage it, and they have managed it. And then we've got a couple of things from Andrew Johns, who I think I said last week. He always says crazy stuff. You've got to accept it. Andrew Johns raised his eyebrows by saying he'd pick James Tedesco and Cody Walker in the New South Wales spine. Joey, that's madness. I think Andrew Johns often falls for the myth that Queensland are super loyal when they're not. Okay, it's a myth. Queensland
loyalty to winning.
Yes. Queensland talk about it. They talk about a lot of stuff. Like, I remember Mal Meninga talking about how he wouldn't pick players that got in trouble off the field, and then he picked Darren Lockyer and Jonathan Thurston and people who got in trouble off field. You know, they criticise New South Wales for not picking and sticking and staying loyal, but they were losing and constantly losing. You know, like, that's the thing. They're constantly losing.
I mean, the thing is, you can only be loyal to winning in anything.
And so Andrew Johns will often... I think Andrew Johns will kind of fall for this marketing fluff that Queensland say the reason we won is because we stayed loyal. The reason you won was because you picked an awesome team full of immortals and you played better, and then the next year you stayed loyal and won again. That's not the reason you won. You know, it's actually the opposite. It's the opposite way. You won, and so the reason you were loyal was because you won, not the reason you won was because you were loyal. Yeah. But Andrew Johns has for years been going on about it. And I mean, there was a game a few years ago where it was something like, I got a Facebook memory about it last year. Mitchell Pearce was the most capped New South Wales player. It's in some game where he'd played like 13 games or 17 games or something. And on the other side of the park, I think it was Darren Lockyer, had played 55 games for Queensland or something nonsense like that. But again, like, the only reason they did that was because they won. If Darren Lockyer played poorly and they had lost, they wouldn't have picked him. But Darren Lockyer is a champion player who always played well and was a winner. So they continued to pick him. James Tedesco, right now, got outplayed by Dylan Edwards like 3 weeks ago. In dominant fashion. And week to week, when you compare the two, Dylan Edwards is winning. James Tedesco, Tom Tavoyevich is beating James Tedesco. And Cody Walker, please.
Yeah, I mean, this is the thing. Walker was man of the match in Game 3 last year, but clearly he's out of form. I think what Andrew Johns tends to do, from what I can see, is he seems to get really set in his views on certain players, and he seems to just stick to that view. And I think he's guilty of just ignoring current form a bit too much.
Yeah.
And this is the thing. This is what New South Wales need to steer clear of. We've talked about it before. They've lost 3 of the last 4 series. They need to think about players in form right now. They can't be thinking about what happened in previous series because they've only won one of the last 4 series.
That's one of the other things about Queensland picking and sticking. Not only did Queensland win, the players they picked were in form at the time of being picked. And the teams they were in were always at the top of the ladder. So, it was always like the Storm, Broncos players and the Cowboys players that they're picking. Teams that were top 8 teams, picking the champion players out of them that were leading those teams to the top 8. We already had this conversation, but we're going to have it again.
Yes.
It's not scripted. Alex Minaur has beaten Rafael Nadal in straight sets on clay. Dan had some statistics for you.
Yes. So Alex Minaur became the first Australian to beat Nadal on clay. He's also just the 7th player to beat Nadal on clay and Novak Djokovic on hard court in the same season. So very impressive for Alex Minaur there, but we should obviously point out that this is not the normal Rafael Nadal who would normally sweep Alex Minaur to one side on clay. Yeah, I guess real question marks about how long. Nadal at the moment, he seems to be just sort of lingering on at the moment. It seems like he's going on for too long, and he probably should have retired, 18 months ago, I'd say. That's the way it's looking at the moment. He tried to put a positive spin on it, Nadal. He said, look, and he lost 7-5, 6-1 to Demetriou. The Barcelona Open in the second round. Interestingly, it was actually on the court named after Rafael Nadal.
God.
Called the Pista Rafa Nadal. So that's you've made it when you're playing matches on a court named after yourself.
But you don't want to be beaten on yourself.
Yeah. So obviously big red flags here for Nadal. I think obviously the chances of him winning the French Open, he's won it 14 times over his career. But the chances of him winning it, I'd say, are very slim. And I think he'd have no chance at Wimbledon or the US Open, obviously. So I think the common sense thing from here is just do everything you can to get right for the French Open, have one last crack at the French Open, and then call it a day.
And
I think that's the play for Rafael Nadal.
Future world number one, Alex Minaur, is going to win the French Open anyway.
Yeah, he's number 11, and he just goes about his business quietly, doesn't he? He works his way up the rankings. Number 11, he just chips away, and who's to say he can't chip his way into the top 5? I mean, he's done it up to this point, Alex Minaur. He continues to really punch above his weight and overachieve. We've talked about a lot of underachievers in sport. Well, this is an overachiever.
Especially in tennis.
Yeah. We talk about Nick Kyrgios all the time being an underachiever. Well, Alex Minaur is the polar opposite. He is an absolute overachiever who gets the absolute best out of himself. And if there's kids out there playing tennis, this is the player that you want to model yourself.
Definitely.
Absolutely.
And then finally, we already had a small conversation on it, producer John. Chinese swimmers, it's been outed now. Chinese swimmers competed at the Tokyo Olympic Games in 2021. That was actually the 2020 Olympics.
Yes.
Despite having positive drug tests. Now, they had the same drugs in their system as old mate who got in trouble and suspended, Sun Yang, that Mac Horton protested against. But this was from a tainted supplement for them. They've all been stripped of their medals now. This is honestly, I've talked about this before, and anybody who wants to understand this, should go listen to Jordan Burroughs discuss it and how Russia had all their medals stripped as far back as 1984. It does nothing for the people. They don't even want their medals because you get endorsements and money and stuff. You don't get money from playing at the Olympics. You do now. They're putting some money into it and stuff. But you don't make money from being in the Olympics. You make money from the endorsements from being in the Olympics. And there's a massive pay bump between even silver and gold. So they don't want their medal. They've missed it. They don't. They want to. What they're looking for is the memorable moment in which they are on the podium at the Olympics, winning gold, which will then go and further their career and get them endorsements and stuff like that. Rocking up to their house 3 years later and going, oh, by the way, the guy who beat you was stripped and here's your gold medal is...
That doesn't get you all that sponsorship money that you lost in the ensuing
It won't
years.
even help now because no one wants to sponsor a guy that got their gold medal at their doorstep because the guy who actually beat them was stripped of the gold medal. Like, what advertising campaign is that? I mean, I'm sure some really creative people would be able to come up with an advertising campaign, but you're not going to get the big endorsements. In swimming, what is it, like Speedo? Speedo's not going to come and endorse old mate who came second but now came first. Like, it's not an ad.
Should there be a situation where, and I know obviously we're talking about different countries here and there's all those international complications that go with that, but you sort of go that these athletes who are robbed of medals by these cheats, that they should be able to personally sue these other athletes for all the loss of income that you just talked about.
Mark Hunt tried to sue the UFC and Brock Lesnar after Brock Lesnar bashed him, and then it came out that Brock Lesnar failed his steroid test, and Mark Hunt alleges that UFC knew that Brock Lesnar was on steroids and let him fight anyway. But he lost. Because there's, like, no way to prove it. But honestly, like, you know, Russia, the state, sanctioned it, and they should be able to sue Russia. They should be able to sue the athletes. And it's China, so of course I immediately suspect that China sanctioned this as well. Yeah, like, all of them had the tainted supplements. What a lot of crap.
And what I don't understand is it's been reported they tested positive for the prescription heart drug trimetazidine, TMZ it's called, which can enhance performance at a domestic meet in late 2020 and the first days of 2021. It was determined by Chinese anti-doping authorities that they ingested the substance unwittingly from tainted food and no action against them was warranted. This is the Chinese authority making this determination, and so what if they did it unknowingly? It's still performance enhancing. It still has that impact of a performance enhancing substance, whether they knew about it or not.
So Yoel Romero in the UFC was pinged for drugs, and one of his fights was deemed a no contest, and then he appealed the suspension because it was a tainted supplement, and he proved that, and then he sued the supplement company. And he made tens of millions of dollars in his settlement order. I don't even know if they ever paid. But his fight wasn't changed. You know, it's still a no contest because he was, even accidentally, on performance-enhancing drugs during it. And that's exactly what you're saying. Like, they were still on performance-enhancing drugs. They should not have been allowed. They knew before the Olympics. Yeah. Before. Yeah. It wasn't a Yoel Romero situation where after they went, you know what, mate, you've just popped. And so he's proved that it was an accident, and he accepts his no contest. You know, they don't go and reverse his record. But that's after. These guys knew before. They shouldn't have been allowed to compete.
They still got an advantage out of it, whether they knew about it or not. So it's clear that they're just putting out that line because they don't want to be held accountable for it. Well, it's
China, so you can't because China puts too much money into everything.
So that Australian team that finished third in that 4x200 metre relay at the 2020 or 2021 Tokyo Olympics. So it now looks like that they would be elevated to a silver medal now.
Who cares?
Finished third, Ariane Titmus, Emma McKeon, Maddie Wilson, Leah Neal, Meg Harris, Molly O'Callaghan, Brianna Throssell and Tamsin Cook. They'd be elevated to second if...
I guarantee you, go ask them. They'll be like, I don't care. Why do I care? What do I get out of it? The medal...
Other than a different colour medal.
Yeah, the medal
to silver.
Is not the outcome you seek when you are an athlete. The medal is the indicator at the time. They want to stand on the podium and say they came second. They want to get the endorsements and the furthering of their career and the everything they get, the plaudits and the cheers and everything from coming second. Not, we came third. Oh, by the way, 3 years later, actually, you came second. Well, it's just irrelevant. They don't care. I know the Olympic medals are worth a bit more, but it's like I see it at jiu-jitsu competitions all the time where, like, I make fun of it where, like, white belts who win a gold medal will, like, stand up and cheer and get... So it's like, I make fun of them because, dude, it's a white belt. Like, it's a local competition. Calm down. I could still beat you. But that's the excitement they want. That's what they seek. That feeling, you know, not... If I went to anyone... black belt world champion in jiu-jitsu and said, like, 5 years later, oh, by the way, you actually won. They'd be like, who cares, man? they're not going to be able to put it on their posters and say, like, black belt world champion. These swimmers aren't going to be able to put on their, like, they can put on their Instagram, now silver at the, like, pfft. Well, that becomes a joke. And some of them might do it. Like, I know guys who put, like, 4 times champion at certain competitions, even though they had no one in their divisions and they didn't have any fights. But they're doing it for a joke. That's how non-serious it is. All these poor people have done is been given a medal that they should have been able to have the chance to win, which they didn't at the time.
Well, this is we're about to go into the Olympic Games. They start in a few months' time, and this is the problem with the Olympic Games, is while you're watching it, you just don't know how many athletes are legit, are not cheating, are clean. You know?
In 3 years, they might get a reverse. Right, in the case of Russia, all the way back as far as 1984.
This is part of the reason why the Olympics is really losing its class these days, and
everyone get into the enhanced games.
I mean, yeah, I know. I know no country wants to host it because of the money involved, but I mean, maybe this is another reason as well. You know, it's hard to take it as seriously now because we don't know who's legit and who's cheating.
Well, none of them are legit if they're from Russia and China, apparently. Well, there's no one from Russia still, right? They're still not allowed to compete.
Yeah, they compete as independent athletes, I think. Not under the Russian banner.
That's it for other sports for the week. We have no May we're looking to bring in Julie Snook to discuss the AFL season, and I've sent her some controversial topics to go over and see if she can approve them. And then we're going to get Robbo in again to preview the upcoming T20 World Cup, because that starts in June.
Yeah, awesome.
Don't forget
that was really good fun, that podcast.
Definitely. Don't forget to sign up at smartb.com.au for all your notifications, tip of the day, daily best bets, smart book updates that tell you when and where your team is playing, and soon where you can watch. And follow the at SmartB app on social, and at Back a Winner on social, especially Twitter for horse racing. And don't forget to listen to the SmartB Racing Update. Everybody have a somber ANZAC Day. I don't know.
Thanks, mate. Enjoy your ANZAC Day footy. Hopefully the Dragons get up for you.
Can't wait for that WhatsApp chat, because no one's available to watch it. See you, man. Bye, producer no one.